What's up guys, it's Lost Grip back with another video. Today's video I'm going to be discussing one of the biggest stat-wise controversies in the past few months of Wizard101, and it's the gear audit. I know you guys have heard me talk about this a million times, and I'm sure you're probably sick of it by now, but I kind of wanted to make a conclusion video because finally a lot of people have come out of the community and kind of spoke their opinion on it, and I did some testing. I talked to some people, specifically Liam and Bandit, two people that have been discussing this a lot, and I'm just going to dig into this video unscripted because I had a huge script, I'm not even kidding, totally 50-50, split between both sides, and now I took a side that I kind of might get a little bit of a flack for as a max storm, as a max fire, but I do really want to discuss my opinion on everything. So I wanted to lay this out in a very formulaic way, a very, understandable way, and a simple way. So here's how I'm going to describe it. Let's lay out how offensive and defensive schools work, and the pros and cons of each, because we have to start from the bare bones, right? They work this way. Offensive schools have higher damage per pip and can do more damage at lower pips. They have typically worse accuracy on their spells as to make up for this. And on top of that, they also have a little bit more limited utility because of their extremely high damage in some scenarios. And also, as a final thing to make up for this, they have, lesser health, because they do more damage. The offensive schools, however, have lower DPP, typically more accuracy and a little bit more utility spells. And finally, they have a little bit higher health to combat this, to combat this damage difference. And this is kind of the division that we've solved between the two offensive, or sorry, not the two offensive, but the offensive and the defensive schools. This is kind of the split that we've seen. And this is something that I kind of wanted to help people understand because it took me a long time to understand as well. My view on this is that I feel like as an offensive school, it seems almost like you're at a distinct disadvantage this meta. I've seen some crazy unfair trades. I've seen some completely unfair trades between Merciless gear users as well as, motorist gear users and how it looks and how it seems like you're being completely screwed over. And oftentimes it is kind of just player bias or viewer bias is what they also would call it, right? It seems like as a fire or a storm, you're at a distinct disadvantage. But after some testing and some extremely surprising facts, I found out that fire and storm actually do the correct amount of damage. Now, this is the way Bandit described it to me, right? In a fair gear audit, a spell, for example, if I'm sending, let's say this Phoenix does 700 damage. It hits high end on this, it does 700 damage. And then this balance judges me with 7 pips, right? The main deck judge, not the broken ass TC judge, but the main deck judge judges me back for 7 pips, right? Let's say my Phoenix did 1432 or some shit like that with my crit and with my damage and stuff, and the judge does back like 1422, right? Realistically, that's a balanced gear audit, right? Because if you're using the same damage spells, they should be doing the same damage to each other. And surprisingly, I could not believe this. Fire versus balance meta stats, I was doing the exact same damage with, I believe it was, I want to say I used an Ember Everburn versus an 8-pip judge, and it did, I think, what about Storm versus Balance and Storm versus Death? Well, it's actually the exact same problem. It literally did the exact same damage. Literally, there was the exact same quote-unquote problem we thought we had. It did the exact same damage. So it comes down to this problem, right? This is what it comes down to that I've been trying to say and kind of realized a few days ago, right? Is that a lot of the problem comes down to spells. And unfortunately, there's a lot of broken spells in the game right now. For example, a perfect example is Balance's Hydra. Hydra does way too much damage, is literally a spell that should be on a school like Fire or Myth, because what the fuck, what is a multi-hit doing a 1500 damage through a tower shield for? First of all, that's ridiculous, right? I don't know why that isn't on a school like Myth or something, right? So let's just start on that. Balance Hydra needs nerfed desperately. I will say that. Second of all, Death's Headless Horseman. As much as I love Death, Headless Horseman is a little bit too out of line, and for Lore's DPP, it's doing a little bit too much. With Calypso, with people who have tested Calypso versus Headless, Headless is a little bit too overtuned, I will say. That is another thing that's a little bit too overtuned. And of course, you know, with the other one is Deadly Minotaur, which of course is being changed, but Headless probably needs looked at as well. There's a lot of spells that also could be brought up as an example of what I've just mentioned. There's a lot of OP spells right now that kind of do a little bit too much damage, but that's for a whole other different video, and I'd love to discuss that at a future date. My final conclusion of this point is that I feel like Headless and Hydra are two spells that, for example, should never be used to compare DPP, and how broken some school is, because I understand that comes right down to spells, and the gear audit really has nothing to do with that. I do want to say, though, in terms of design flaws in KI kind of shooting themselves in the foot, I really dislike how leftover damage was designed. This is a mechanic that I will mention, and why it seems like a lot of offensive schools are being completely screwed over, and why it looks like it as Fire and Storm. You can't be frustrated at us because honestly, it looks so unbalanced. Like, if I put on my Merciless Fire robe and then compare what this looks like to, like, let's say a Death or a Balance, it's honestly kind of, what is this stitch? It is honestly kind of a joke, right? It looks like I'm doing no damage. It looks like I'd lose trades, but believe it or not, I do still win them by the rules, but it's very, you know, minimal, and I honestly, in some manners, still kind of lose them. So I will say it is really infuriating how glass schools cannot use their glass Merciless gear because of how damage is so much more valuable, or sorry, resist is so much more valuable than damage, that running offensive and glass gear on an offensive school is no longer meta, because you'll notice that you'll get more value out of Death's, for example, a Death damage robe and a Balance damage robe or a Life damage robe than you will a Fire damage robe, because you'll be left over with a lot of leftover damage. And although it does seem balanced on the, you know, forefront of everything, I really don't like how these stats appear. I really do think it looks like Fire and Storm and Myth are being completely screwed over because they have so much leftover damage that literally doesn't really appeal to anything, and in fact wastes 3-4 damage that could be put on Resist or Pierce or anything else that's not useless. So I will say that is one thing that really infuriates me about the Merciless Merciless robes in general, is just how they're designed, and how I kind of wish there was a little bit more points put into Pierce and Resist for Fire and Storm. And I also think that Resist deserves the exact same treatment that Damage got at some point in the future in order to counteract a lot of the other problems I've mentioned in the past, such as Ward, Mighty Ward, you know, overdone resistance, you know what I mean, just stuff like that. And then the final point I will make in terms of, you know, just everything in this video is I will side with Liam on, is I think the game design, I know this is a game design opinionated thing, but in my personal opinion, there's no planet in which at level 150, the max level, I should have to socket 2 talents to get max accuracy, max pips. I'm sorry, that is archaic, right? I understand accuracy is a base risk. I understand that that's a base, you know, problem. I understand that that's an issue that affects, you know, the entire game and is a game design opinion. But I'm sorry, if I'm playing a card game that's entirely based on, you know, trying to play better than the other opponent, then I feel like balancing the stats around running double accurate or 1 accuracy, 1 pips, etc. shouldn't be how it is. I understand you're sacrificing damage. I understand there's a lot of stats you have to sacrifice. I understand fizzling is something they view to be a part of the game that's here to stay. But in my personal opinion, I'm telling you guys, it is super unintuitive as a player, as a defensive player, to have literally less damage or have to sacrifice a ridiculous amount of damage in order to not just do something as simple as casting a spell without it failing. Like, I understand that's part of the risk, and that should be a part of PvP from, you know, Exalted and down. But at max level, I shouldn't be fighting to get max accuracy. I shouldn't be fighting to get max pips. And if anything, it should only be really sacrificing 1 talent, not 2. Because it goes even more into the ward problem. Defensive schools will have a considerable advantage if they can freely socket whatever they want in place of our breaker, or our sniper, or our dealer. You know what I mean? Because right now, right, Balance can literally socket whatever they want you know what I mean, that would even the gap of the trade or help them win it based on their HP. And also be able to have a free winning matchup to any school. This is something I read with Bandit a lot about, and while two things we both disagree on, and kind of agreed to disagree on, but I kind of want the game devs to realize that I understand, you know, accuracy should be a big part of the game. I understand that it should still affect it even down the line. There shouldn't be a robe that just gives you 30 accuracy, makes you never fizzle again. Like that's dumb, right? The Mally robe is OP, and I agree. There shouldn't be like that. I really shouldn't have to use more than one talent to make up for this RNG factor. Having to run two talents on my pet to make up for it, and even 3 on I think on Merciless robe Storm, just kind of makes it pointless to play the offensive schools in the first place, because then you can't run the necessary ward talents that they're so keen on keeping in the game. You can't run Mighty, which helps you close the gap of trades by a significant amount. You can't run, you know, Giver, which would help you do a lot more damage and get a lot more even in the trades. I really do feel like there shouldn't be more than one talent you have to sacrifice on your pet. So that's just what I think. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. This is just a conclusive, you know, decision I made and how I feel about the current state of the Merciless gear audit. I think this is honestly going to be my last video. I'd love to pin any comment I heavily agree with that kind of refutes some of the points Bandit's made, because he's very keen on the fact that you should have to fight for your accuracy and pips, despite, you know, having, you know, all this because you have all this damage and everything. So I want to hear what you guys have to say about it. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure you drop a sub. I put a lot of work and a lot of thought into this specific video, because I know it's very important to the community, and I know that everybody's been talking about gear audit. So hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you guys, you know, kind of learned a little bit more about how the state of PvP is right now, and hope you guys have a good rest of your day. Make sure you drop a sub, and peace out. See ya.